Hare Krishna, everybody. Hare Krishna, everyone. Uh, so we are very fortunate to have Mother Urmila here with us in Seattle today. So Mataji is a disciple of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada since 1973. She has a doctorate degree in education and served as a teacher and principal for 25 years. So Mataji, with a doctorate in education, has circled the world over 20 times, delivering workshops and one-on-one coaching. She has helped hundreds of people in dozens of countries find meaningful success in careers that resonate with their own values and nature. Mataji surveyed nearly 400 people in 6 continents for her in-depth research that explored the relationship between overall job satisfaction and various aspects of work, including spiritual faith and practice. She worked as a teacher and school principal for 27 years. So this topic is a very interesting topic. We all have a job outside of our spiritual life, and we are hoping that it will give us knowledge on how to connect our work and spiritual life. Thank you so much, Mataji. We are very looking forward to hear your speech. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Again, thank you for your patience with the technical stuff. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharani Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskachade Shatarani. Okay. Says still not hearing anything, okay. Can you hear me now? Sorry, we're also zooming this. Can you hear me now? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. No, the answer is no, they cannot hear me. Do you want me to just unmute? Do you want me to just unmute? Okay, now I've unmuted. Is that messing up anything anyplace else? Can you hear me now? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Oh, they can hear me now on Zoom. Is it messing up any other sound anywhere else? Okay, we're good. As I said, I was in one place where we had 20 minutes of tech problems with the whiteboard. So, okay. So we're presenting Career Dharma, and my co-author, Dr. Ruchira Datta, is also online, aka Rukmini Devi Dasi. That's not my god sister Rukmini, Anuttama's wife. My co-author, Ruchira Datta, she has a PhD in mathematics and has done a lot of scientific research, including like cancer research. And she's very, very knowledgeable in economic systems. All right, if you'd like more information, we are coming out. We have here the printed book. We have online also an ebook. We're coming out with an audio book. We're also working on a complete online course, and we're working on a workbook. So if you would like to get more information, you can just grab this QR code, and if you put your name on our mailing list, we'll not send you an immediate email confirmation. We're not that sophisticated, but you will be on our list and you will get notified. And we do have a very limited number of books here. We have Career Dharma books here. We've already sold, I think, 3 or 4 of them. And we also have our book, Krishna Meditation, which we'll be teaching tomorrow. Both of these are Amazon bestsellers. And we're here discounted from the Amazon price. And I will sign them for you also. I'd like you to imagine that your daily life has gradually come to include all the activities that you've always dreamed of, that you love the work you're doing, what you're producing, and how you're making a meaningful contribution. That your work is giving you the kinds of prosperity that truly enrich you and that you joyfully share with others. Now imagine if the whole world was like this. That, of course, was the vision of Srila Prabhupada. Not only to teach us Krishna prema, it's not that we just grab our prema and run, but also, as Krishna says in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that we should be able to live happily and attain liberation. So we're going to be looking at 4 main areas: identifying our ideal career field and prosperity type. And that's generally what people are interested in. What's my nature? What can I do that fits my nature? However, there's more if we're really going to be happy and prosperous in our career. So we want to go beyond that to learning the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful, beyond that to progress toward dharmic mastery, then looking at the whole system for peace and prosperity. Now, this is a summary of the entire book, and therefore I'm going to be running through it rather quickly and at a basic level, right? If you want to go more deeply, we do have the book available. This encompasses 9 principles, and I'd like it if you could read this with me. If we can read this together. Connecting our nature with our livelihood. Everybody. Advancing through life while nourishing our nature. Extending our prosperity to others. Ethical and meaningful work of value. Delight in cherishing our prosperity and field of work. Having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work, above the shades of ego, maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition within the fields, all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. And if you put those together, they spell career Dharma. That was hard. Okay, we're going to look at the first area of identifying our prosperity type and career field. And the first principle, connecting our nature with our livelihood. So this first thing I'm going to present, I also teach in an extended class of 2 to 2.5 hours each. Today I'm going to be spending about 10 or 15 minutes on it. So if you're interested, we have some things on YouTube, and we go much more deeply in the book. So a lot of people think in terms of a job just about money. Does he have a successful career? You're going to think, does he make a lot of money? And we often think of prosperity just in terms of money. And certainly money is important, right? I can't buy shoes without money. I couldn't buy a computer without money. It's not that we don't need money. But we want to ask, is money the only way of measuring prosperity? So how many of you have met someone, know of someone, heard of someone, read of someone who doesn't have a lot of money, but who has a rich, fulfilling life? How many of you have ever heard of, met someone, read anybody? Okay. How many of you have ever read about, met, know of someone who has a lot of money and a poor, unfulfilled life? All you have to do is look at any newspaper headlines. So we all know that there's not a one-to-one correspondence between money and feeling prosperous in life. So the Vedas teach us that there's 6 types of prosperity. And usually each of us have 2 or 3 of these that are really important to us in our work. Now, we're not looking right now at what your job produces for other people, although that's also important, but what kind of prosperity your work will give to you. So the first is Aishvarya, which comes from what Sanskrit word? Ishvara, yes, which means what? Controller. And so Aishvarya has to do with the prosperity of being a controller. This is, for example, if you have some positional title of leadership, where you're responsible for engaging and organizing people and projects. Now, this is something that I really fought in myself, especially as a devotee. I'm thinking, well, we're not supposed to be a controller. That's Maya, right? I just should be a quiet person in the back of the room. And one time, one devotee was doing some research for his master's in psychology. He was giving everybody personality tests, and he asked us to participate. So I did that, and he met with me afterwards, and he said, "Urmila, you cannot not lead." And then I realized that I had been spending my whole life trying to not lead. Now, it's important to have people who are energized by this type of Aishvarya. One devotee that I met in Belgium, she told me that she started running a business, and she said she liked the marketing and the sales and all of that, but what she really enjoyed was helping other people become successful and taking leadership roles to help other people to grow the business. I asked her, "How many people are you managing right now?" She said, "Altogether over 50,000. So there's some of us that really find taking leadership roles to be very enriching and inspiring in our work. And other people are ambivalent about this. And some people really don't like this. Some people really, they just want to do their own work, or they just want to be part of a team. I met one devotee like this in Auckland, where she was put in a leadership role, and she said as soon as that happened, she had problems with sleeping, she had problems with digesting, and she just felt completely miserable taking that kind of responsibility. So I'd like you to think about in your work when you have had Aishvarya and when you haven't had it. And how do you feel and what happens to you? What are the results in your life when you have it and when you don't have it? So the next is Gyan. Gyan means knowledge and wisdom. So some of us have work where we're forced by the nature of our work to keep learning. Like one of my friends who's an eye doctor told me that she has to read at least 3 articles in her field every week to keep current. And some of us really are enriched by having Gyan as part of our work, where we're the kind of people that love to research, we're insatiably curious, and we want that to be part of our work. Other people are ambivalent about this, and some people actively don't like this. So I've met a number of people who've said to me, well, you know, I really should be in that career, but to do in that career, I'd have to do more studying, and I really don't like to study. I really don't like to have to keep learning new things. When I've given in-service training to teachers, I've had some who said to me, I've been teaching for 25 years, I really don't want to keep getting more and more training. So if you can think about when you had Gyan as part of your work, when you didn't have it, how do you feel and what happens in your life when you have it, and how do you feel and what happens when you don't have it? And the next is Virya. Virya is like health and strength. So I have one friend in Germany whose husband works as a construction worker. And he told me that what he loves about his job is the physicality of it. He said, you know, when he can't do work for a few days, he starts feeling restless, that he really wants to do something physical as part of his work. One of my other friends in Europe was telling me how much she enjoys taking care of the cows because of the physical element. She says, I love walking to the goshala and back. I like all the physical work involved with the cows. So my daughter runs a Bharatanatyam dance school, and she really enjoys that she gets a full workout whenever she's teaching a class. Now, Virya can also mean health in general. So one of my friends runs an Ayurvedic restaurant in New York, and not only does she cook all the Ayurvedic meals, that's also what she eats. Now, sometimes a person may have a career that gives virya to others, but it doesn't give them virya, like a dentist makes other people healthy, but doing dentistry doesn't make the dentist healthy. Okay? So some of us we really need this as part of our work in order to feel enriched. Again, others are ambivalent, and some of us really don't like this as part of our work. Like my work is very sedentary, and I like doing physical exercise as a break in my work rather than as part of my work. I find it annoying when it's part of my work. So again, for some of us, this is something that really enriches us in our work. For some of us, we're ambivalent, and for other people, we don't want this as part of our work. So I'd like you to think about when you've had virya as part of your work and when you haven't had it. What are the results for you? How do you feel when you have it? And how do you feel when you don't have it? The next is Shri. Shri literally means anything that's like sparkly and splendorous. So it can mean any kind of beauty, like visual beauty, auditory beauty, olfactory beauty, beauty of nature. It can also mean charismatic leadership, which is a little different from Aishvarya. Like if you think of some, musician who's on stage and everybody's cheering. So they may be a charismatic leadership, but they might not have any administrative titled position where they're managing other people. And those who are managers may also be charismatic, but they might not. So you might have both Aishvarya and Shri, or you might have just one or the other. And you could have some combination of those, right? So I have a friend who does a perfume business. She's working a lot with olfactory beauty. If somebody's running a plant nursery, they're working with visual beauty, olfactory beauty, the beauty of nature. As I said, my daughter who works with Bharatanatyam has a lot of Shri in her work, right? There's the music, the costumes, the jewelry, the gracefulness of the dance, and so forth. So for some of us, Shri is very important in our work. Without some form of Shri, we really feel impoverished. Other people are ambivalent about it, and other people really don't want this as part of their work. They feel it's an unnecessary frill. They want to get something practical done and let somebody else deal with that. So I'd like you to think of when you've had Shri, any form or any combination, as part of your work. When you haven't had it, how do you feel when you have it? How do you feel when you don't have it? Then there's Yasha. Yasha is a personality in the Bhagavatam who's the child of Kirti and Dharma. So Kirti means people are talking about you. It's related to the word kirtan. And Dharma means that which is authentic, that which is right, that which is real. So Yasha means people are speaking about you because you're doing great things. Now, people who are just on stage and everyone's cheering for them is more the charismatic leadership of Shri. Yasha in work generally implies that there's some kind of community. And it's a community that's not just focused on work, but it's a community that's really admiring and acknowledging and supporting each other. And I've met people who really can't work at all without Yasha. Like if you ask them, please get something done on their own, nothing happens. And if they're working with a supportive team, everything happens. I remember when I was presenting this in Zurich, the person organizing the class came up to me afterwards and said, wow, I've realized how important Yasha is to me in my work. Just like during COVID, a lot of people were working remotely. And as soon as that was over, they're like, wow, I can't wait to get back to where I'm actually working with my team. Yes? So for some people, this is very important in their work. And other people are ambivalent, and other people really don't like this. Right? There are some people, if they work with a team, they want it to be completely work-focused. They don't like awards dinners. They really don't like mixing the social and emotional aspects of life with their work. So I'd like you to think of when you've had Yasha as part of your work, when you haven't had it, how do you feel when you have it, and how do you feel when you don't have it? And the last is vairagya. So that literally means without attachment. And a lot of people think of vairagya as an anti-prosperity, but it is listed as one of the types of prosperity. Now, those of us who like vairagya in our work want things such as a flexible schedule, being able to travel a lot as part of your work, being able to live a simple lifestyle as part of your work. For example, I was reading about one man who had a job in Denmark. He was a boss of a business in Denmark, and one of the things he really liked about his work is that he could ride a bicycle to work. Then he switched to working for a company in Japan, and they said, if you're going to be the boss, you can't ride a bicycle to work. It makes our company look bad. You have to drive a car. Right? And there's some of us who really like to have vairagya as part of our work. Vairagya can also be part of your work. For example, if you're a criminal defense attorney and you're dealing with the really negative sides of life, you may develop a lot of vairagya as part of your work. It can also mean if you're working a lot with teaching people forgiveness, teaching people equanimity, or you have a work that's really separated from the social and emotional parts of life. So some of us really want vairagya as part of our work. Some people are ambivalent, and again, some people really don't want this. Some people are much more interested in a job that has more security and regulation, where they can have a lot of things, right? I mean, I met one scholar who wants to have, you know, a house full of 1,000 books at their ready, and really wouldn't like to have this kind of a lifestyle. So I'd like you to think about when you've had vairagya as part of your work, when you haven't had it, how do you feel when you have it, and how do you feel when you don't have it? So I'm sure most of you have realized that there's 2 or 3 of these that are really important to you, yes? We have chapter 2 in our book deals with the 6 types of prosperity. And we have an exercise on page 499 where you can look at different types of careers and you evaluate what types of prosperity is there. I mean, when I was teaching this in Govardhan Eco Village, we actually had time for everybody to go and do the exercises and then meet the next day. But this is something you can do yourselves also. Like those of you who have the book, if you go through those exercises, the answers are on page 515. And I suggest that you actually try to work it out first before you look at the answers. It's much better for learning experience. In Appendix B, which I can't remember the exact page for Appendix B, we have some questions and exercises you can ask as far as understanding your own prosperity types. When I give this as an extended class, I do those exercises on a whiteboard. When you put them in order and then you have someone else work with you to see actually what the order is. Now, what's nice about understanding these prosperity types is you can have a variety of jobs that have similar prosperity types. For example, one devotee friend of mine worked for years as a traveling musician. Actually, he came to Seattle when I was here one time. So he and his wife went in a van, and it was just the 2 of them, and so he'd have to always load and unload the equipment. And they wrote their own lyrics, which were philosophical, though when I heard them perform, you couldn't actually hear the lyrics. And then they had like a light show and dances and stuff. So what prosperity types was he getting from his work? Yeah? Shri. Lots of Shri, yes? What else? Yes? Lots of Vairagya. What else? Not much Yash, because he wasn't part of a community. He got some charismatic leadership with Shri, but not really a community. Yeah? Virya, yes. And no Aishvarya. So now he is a tour guide of national parks here in America. And so he travels from one park to the next, and he studies, and a little bit of Gyan, because he wrote philosophical lyrics, so a little bit. So he studies about the parks in advance, what's the history of the park, what's the flora and the fauna, and he checks out the trails, and then he takes people on a tour, sometimes an hour, sometimes a day, sometimes multi-days with camping. So what kind of prosperity is he getting from his work now? Vairagya. Gyan, yes? Shri. and Virya. And again, not Yasha or Aishwarya. So although those look like very different kinds of career, he's getting the same types of prosperity. And if we look at what types of prosperity really enrich me, then we can understand what kind of career would be suitable. Now, I've had people say to me, actually one senior devotee asked me this in Mayapurdam, why should we care what enriches us? And the answer is very simple. Srila Prabhupada says that we are all like a cell in the universal body. So just like we have brain cells, we have heart muscle cells, we have skin cells, and each of them need a different mix and kind of nutrients in order to be healthy. So knowing what we need in order to be healthy actually contributes to the health of the whole universal body. Does this make sense to everybody? Yes? It's actually part of our service to understand what makes me healthy. Like in Ayurveda, there's 3 main different types and then combinations. And each of those types has different kinds of food that are good for them. Like if you're primarily kapha or pitta, you should eat potatoes, and if you're primarily vata, you shouldn't eat so many potatoes. And that enables us actually to function. All right, now we're going to look at another way of understanding our nature. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this verse. So you'll notice here that Krishna says there's 4 fields, and that they're determined by quality and work. The most essential part of this verse is that our qualities should match our work. And I've had devotees say to me, well, you can do work that's different from your qualities. And I said, no, the whole point of this verse is that the kind of work we're doing should match our qualities. Now, I know that all of you know the Sanskrit words for these 4 kinds of work. I'm going to ask that you forget that you know them. I'd like to ask for at least a week you forget that you know those Sanskrit names. Why? Because we have a lot of misconceptions or prejudices about those terms. Would that be reasonably accurate? Yes? So let's just go with a fresh view. So Dr. Ruchira Datta and I spent quite a long time trying to figure out what English words would be best to convey the essence of each of the 4 fields. And I'm sure you could argue about our choices, but I think we did a reasonably good idea, that the fields are artistry, ideas, resources, and government. Now, one of the first questions that Dr. Datta and I were asking, why did Krishna divide work, all the hundreds of thousands of careers, into these 4 fields? What was the purpose behind that? Why not just say, as and Prabhupada does sometimes say, whatever work you're doing, it doesn't matter what it's designated, just offer it to the Lord. But there's a lot of reasons why there's this division. One reason is that these fields always exist. Specific jobs come and go, like there weren't any software engineers 200 years ago. There aren't a lot of blacksmiths jobs available today. But these 4 fields always exist, except in the most simple of human societies. And people with the 4 temperaments of these fields also always exist. But the main reason is that the Dharma of these fields are different from each other. And their Dharma is mutually exclusive. I cannot count how many people say to me, can't we be in more than one field? And the answer is no. If people feel they're in more than one field, which happens a lot, either the person is confused, which happens a lot in 2024, a lot of us are very confused, or we're in one field particularly assisting another field. You could be in ideas especially assisting resources, or resources particularly assisting ideas, or government particularly assisting resources, and this also causes some confusion. Now, normally when I teach about the fields, I do it in 2 classes of 2 hours each. I spend 2 hours discussing what the fields are, and another 2 hours talking about what the nature of the people in the fields are. Right now, I'm going to take about 25 minutes. So I will be going over it again just briefly. Chapter 3 in our book describes the nature of the fields. Chapter 4 in our book describes the temperament of the people in the fields. And that same exercise on page 499 also gives you exercises in the fields, the answers to which are on page 521. Okay, first we're going to look at the field of artistry. So the field of artistry is what supplies all the support, the functionality, the beauty, and the pleasures of society. Without the field of artistry, metaphorically speaking, there wouldn't be salt and spices in the food of life. Life would just be kind of like plain rice. And without the field of artistry, nothing would work. So all the support, all the functionality, all the beauty, all the pleasures of society. Now it says in the second canto of the Bhagavatam that the workers in this field are especially protected by the Lord's lotus feet because of their providing this essential functionality of society. So some ideas as to what careers might be in the field of artistry. Now, when I ask these questions, this is not an exam question, it's a learning question. And therefore, wrong answers are just as helpful as right answers, because wrong answers will show you what it's not. Does this make sense? Yes? Understanding what something is not is just as important as understanding what it is. So when I'm asking this, I'm not testing you or me. Sometimes I ask the audience questions to test how well I taught something to see whether or not I need to reteach it. But I'm not doing either of those. This is a learning exercise. So what careers do you think might be in the field of artistry? Yeah? Construction work, yes. Not only in the construction company, but the workers in the construction company, yes. Like house painters? Yes. Most musicians, but not all. The vast majority of musicians, yes. What else? Dancers, most, not all. Novelists, generally. Now, if you're writing like romance novels, crime novels, yes. If you're writing a metaphorical novel to teach truth, then no. Most chefs, yes, generally chefs. Fashion industry, yes. So your designers, the people who do the sewing work, yes. Not the owners of the fashion businesses, though. All engineers of all types, yes. Architect, yes. Okay, let's now look at the temperament of the people in this field. So the temperament of the people who are suited to this field. Now keep in mind that in 2024, there's a lot of situations where the field and the temperament are not matching, where the person has a temperament where they should be working in another field. Is this clear to everybody? Yes? So we're looking at what is the temperament that suits someone to this field. So this is a joy of like, I made it, I built it, I cleaned it, I created it for somebody else. All right, I think they want, if somebody wants it, you can get a book from my son if you have to leave early. So this is basically a mood of service. And the temperament of this field is the closest to the temperament of bhakti. Now it's interesting, all four fields have something that particularly is nice for bhakti. But with this, it's this attitude. And I realized this one time in St. Petersburg. We were staying at the apartment of a devotee that had about 15 original oil paintings by this artist Yugalapriya. And my daughter has a lot of prints of those paintings. I have a lot of those electronic files, but the originals, wow. This is an artist that uses a lot of texture in her work, and she even puts sparkles in with the paint. And it was just a completely different experience. And I was thinking how long it took to paint each of those paintings that the artist would never see again. They'd be hanging in someone else's house. That is the mood of the field of artistry. It's a mood of service. It's a mood of taking happiness in others' happiness. This is also a field of satisfaction. This is not an expansive field. People in this field are not profit-minded. They don't mind if they have a lot of money, but they're not the kind of people that are going to work hard to make a lot of money. If they have a comfortable house, good food to eat, nice clothes to wear, a loving partner in life, if they're treated with dignity and respect for their work, and if they're able to please customers and clients, they're happy. Now, this is also important to remember when you're dealing with people who work in the field of artistry. Like, let's say someone comes and cleans your house, and you figure just paying them is enough. It's not. They really want to please a customer or a client. Now, the Bhagavatam also says that one of the qualities of those who have dharmic expertise in this field is honesty. Just the other day, I was helping one of my grandchildren get her bicycle fixed in Hawaii. And someone else was ahead of us, and he said, this guy who runs this shop, he's very honest. What do we mean by honesty? Right? When the plumber says, this is how much the pipe cost me, here's the receipt for the pipe, and here's the amount for the labor, here's what's actually wrong with your car. All right? So that kind of honesty. And the main questions they ask about their work to know whether or not they're happy with their work are, is it beautiful? Is it supportive? Any questions about the temperament of the field of artistry? Yes? Because we confuse it with pride. It's interesting, Srila Prabhupada says that we can be proud of our master, Krishna. You know, there is a kind of, we use the same word for it, unfortunately, that's the problem. But it's something like what Srila Rupa Goswami says, the only price for attaining Krishna is greed. And then Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, greed is one of the three great gates to hell. So it's a different kind of pride. It's that sort of satisfaction, I have pleased the customer, I have pleased the client by doing something that has a level of high integrity. That's actually an dharmic satisfaction. It's the kind of satisfaction you get when you eat healthy food. It's of a different nature. If it's, well, I've done this because I'm so great and I'm so powerful and I'm so wonderful, and that's a demoniac kind of pride. But this is sort of, I'm doing my right thing. Actually, it's interesting, I heard a class Srila Prabhupada gave, unfortunately I heard this after we printed the book, where he said that if you want to be what's natural, that is not a desire. He said, if you want what is natural, that is not a desire. He said, just like if someone said, I want to eat, you're not going to say, what's wrong with you? You want to eat? So if we want to be who we are, that is desirelessness. And if this is my whichever one of these fields is our natural place, to want to be in our natural place for the glory of Krishna is not pride. And we get a certain satisfaction from that. Tomorrow when we talk about Krishna meditations, we'll talk about how Krishna says he is victory, he is the goal. So understanding, well, this is Krishna. He says he's the intelligence of the intelligence, of the intelligent. You know, when you do something and it works and you're like, whoa, that feeling is actually Krishna. And when we appreciate it like that, then it's not demoniac pride. That's an excellent question. Any other questions about artistry? Yes. Yes. Some artists make a lot of money. Yeah, but you won't find, the natural temperament of this field is people want to work so they can have a decent living, but they're not going to be ambitious for money unless they're being pushed by an outside source, which often tends to damage them, by the way.
If they are in this field, if they are artists, but they are very ambitious, then they don't belong.
There's something wrong.
Okay.
Yeah. The people in this field are not by nature very ambitious people. They can be pressured by someone else, usually someone in resources. So it's usually someone in the field of resources. They find someone who has talent in this field and they push them. And that often damages those people. It's not their natural place. I mean, they don't mind it. I don't think very many people mind if they get a lot of money. But, I mean, I know a few people that do, but most people don't mind. But it's a question of, if I have everything that I need, will I put in more hours and more work and more days? And that's not the mentality of people in this field.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Was that, you understand? Yes. Yeah, okay. All right, let's go on to the field of ideas. So the field of ideas produces the wisdom and the knowledge and the guidance for society. This is kind of the eyes of society, the guidance system for society. All right. Now, generally this is done through language, sometimes through mathematics, but occasionally it's done through the arts. So some musicians, some artists, some sculptors, some actors, some dancers are actually in the field of ideas rather than artistry. So if you know somebody's singing songs, "My baby left me and I'm crying," that's artistry. But if someone's singing songs about philosophy and truth and the aesthetics of it are secondary, that can be an idea. So some ideas people use music, arts, theater, dancing as their means of conveying wisdom, but generally it's language or mathematics. Some ideas of what careers might be in the field of ideas. Teachers, yes. Now that's if you're teaching as that's your career. Like if you're a baker, but you also have some YouTube videos on how to ice a cake, that doesn't put you into ideas. Scientists, yes. No, entrepreneurs, no. Philosophers, yes. Yes? Mathematicians, yes. Not just accountants, though. Whistleblower. Is that a career? I don't know if you can be a whistleblower as a career. You do it one time, your career's gone, yes. So I don't think that counts as a livelihood. Yes? Now, coaches, it's interesting. Like, let's say you're an athletic coach. What would that be? That's artistry. Okay? Let's say you're a business coach. Let's say you go into businesses and you help them become more profitable and then you're a leader in resources. But if you're a life coach, if you're giving people guidance how to live their life, wisdom how to live their life, then that's in ideas. Somebody else?
The whistleblower could be an investigative journalist.
Aha, so the voice from the sky, that's my co-author. So she says the whistleblower could be an investigative journalist, and then yes, that would be in ideas. Thank you, Rukmini. So yes, you could be, look at that. It's so nice to have a co-author. It's been one of my top life experiences working with Dr. Datta as my co-author. So yes, as an investigative journalist, then you'd be a whistleblower as your career. See? I got a wrong answer, and I ended up having a learning experience. Okay, anybody else? Mediator would be in government. Anybody else? Depends on who you work for. If you're mediating because you're interested in fairness and justice and ethics, which is the main meaning of mediation, it would be in government. Okay, let's look at the mentality of people in ideas. So ideas is also a field of satisfaction rather than expansion. But this is a different kind of satisfaction. The kind of satisfaction of ideas is you're primarily satisfied if you have stimulating mental and intellectual work. And you may not even notice your basic creature comforts. So a little different than the satisfaction of artistry, which is a satisfaction with basic comforts. Yeah. It is also a field like artistry of honesty, but it's a different kind of honesty. So the Bhagavad Purana describes this honesty as straightforwardness, that you're willing to tell the truth even if people don't want to hear it, which is very different than the honesty of artistry, because in artistry you're trying to please a customer and a client. Yes, and you're more honest about what's actually wrong with your car and what's actually the price of the pipe. So another, something I forgot to mention about artistry, people in artistry are willing to sacrifice in order to keep the integrity of their craft, even if they're pressured for more profits or for expediency. And people in ideas are willing to sacrifice for the sake of objective truth. You think about reporters who were jailed for not revealing their sources, or people who were burned at the stake as heretics, or that kind of thing. Yes. Okay, any questions or discussions about the temperament of the people suited for the field of ideas? Yes. Teachers are in the field. If you're a professional teacher, that's the field of ideas. Again, we want to distinguish between work and temperament. Like you might have the temperament of artistry and be wrongly working in ideas. Or you might have the temperament of ideas and be wrongly working in artistry. But the temperament that's suited for, we're talking about the dharmic temperament that's suited for that field. Any other questions about the field of ideas, the temperament? Well, you have the same thing for both artistry and ideas, that people are unlikely to want to work extra hard just to become rich. They don't tend to be ambitious in that sense. Yes? The what of ideas? They get patents, like inventors. Well, it depends what you're inventing. Generally, we could say inventors are in the field of artistry. But there certainly are intellectual things that you could patent. And Rukmini, what did you patent? You have a whole bunch of patents.
Yes, they were related to language search engine. So this was for Google, so augmenting queries with synonyms based on language statistics.
Could you hear that? Okay.
It's sort of ambiguous whether that was in the field of artistry or not, though.
Okay.
It's a long question.
Any other questions about ideas? Yes. Objective truth. In artistry, there will people, this is people who are actually following the Dharma of that field. If people have really have dharmic expertise in artistry, they're willing to sacrifice to maintain the integrity and the quality of their work, even when they're under pressure for more profits or for expediency. In ideas, they're willing to sacrifice for objective truth. If somebody works with statistics, it's interesting. When I was traveling, I met two different data analysts. So one set of data analysts I met when I was teaching this at Lloyd's Bank in London. And he was part of a team that worked for the bank. And they would get data, they would find their data, then they would analyze it statistically, then they would interpret it, and then they would advise the bank. And I said, do you decide what data you want to collect? He said, yes. I said, are you doing the interpretation and advising steps? He said, yes, that's ideas. I met another data analyst who worked for another company, and he said that the company told them what data to collect. They would just collect that data, they would put it through the statistical tests, but they didn't interpret the data, and they didn't give any advice based on the data. That would be artistry. Okay, we're going to go on to resources. So the field of resources is the only field that provides the resources. We could say that they're the only field that really creates wealth in the society, as far as things like the raw materials of food, the raw materials for fabric, for construction, for medicine. Now, of course, they don't really create them because they're getting them from the natural resources. But these are the only people who are generating them. So the other three fields transform them or move them around. But these are the only ones who are generating them. It's only because of people in this field, again, that we have food, that we have fiber, that we have construction materials, and that we have medicines and all the stuff that we need. So some ideas of what careers might be in this field. Yes? Farmers, yes, if you own the farm. If you just go on the farm and pick apples, then you're in artistry. Yes. Someone who owns a mine. Yes. Not the miners who go down into the mine. They're in artistry, but the owners of the mine, yes. Huh? Yes. Manufacturing, yes. Merchants, yes. Now, some merchants are in artistry. Like, let's say that you love to bake cakes, and so you have a little bakery shop. Right? So your interest is not in generating wealth for society. Your interest is in making society beautiful and supportive and pleasing your customers. But you might run your own little business. Banks, yes. So the people who run the banks, and you know when you meet with someone at those tables? Yeah, but not the tellers. The tellers are in artistry. Who else? Any other careers you can think of? They're in artistry. A nice simple example is I have a place at Govardhan, and there's a guy in town who fixes flip-flops, you know, like the little slipper things. And so his shop is a piece of cardboard and a toolbox. So he can set his own hours, he sets his own rates and everything like that. Right? I don't know what he does in the rainy season. And then you have another guy down the street who has a cart where he's selling stuff. Now, that stuff that he's selling, he sources it from all over India, and I think sometimes even places, foreign countries. And he's really watching, like, what time of year do the pilgrims come? What time of year do foreigners come? What part of year do just the Delhiites come? Like, he's got this worked out. And what are the other people in the other carts selling? And what's selling this year? And what's popular? And what's the right source to get it? So the guy with the cart is in resources, and the guy fixing the shoes is in artistry, even though you can say they're both business people. So sometimes people in artistry may have their own little business, but it's small. It tends to be very small. Again, they're not like interested in profits, and they're mostly interested in beauty and support. In North Carolina, the HVAC guy that I use for Tulsi's greenhouse, so he has 3 assistants, and he has his own business, but he's not a business person per se. He's a air conditioning, heating, plumbing guy who works for himself instead of working for a larger company. But he's definitely in artistry, not in resources. Okay, the temperament of the people in resources. So the Bhagavad Purana says that these people are always thirsty, but not for water. So this is a field of expansion. Now you want the temperament of the people for resources to be expansive. They're not growing a garden to feed their family. They're growing something to feed the world. You want them to think expansively. All right? So this is not a field of satisfaction. A difference I can give you, so our youngest son is in the field of resources. So he was running a prasadam business, and when the business was sold, he said, now I could retire at 30. I'm like, great, retire at 30. He said, I don't want to retire at 30. And when he started his own business, he said, I can make as much money working 3 days a week for myself as I could working 5 days a week for another company. I said, great, then just work 3 days a week. He said, no, I want to work 5 days a week and make even more money. So that's the natural expansiveness of this field, which is sometimes misunderstood by others as greediness, but it isn't. I mean, another thing he said to me, which I thought was really indicative of the Dharma of this field, he said, Mata, by the time I was in my early 20s, I had generated more wealth for society than you and Father spent on raising me. And he said, that's my goal for our children, that they should contribute more wealth to society than we invest in their upbringing. So this is the nature of this field. It's an expansive field. Now, this is a field of diplomacy, not of honesty. Srila Prabhupada writes in an 18th chapter purport that lying is compulsory for people in this field. Right? You don't expect when you go into a shop that they're going to list how much they paid for the pipe. You know, your plumber will give you a receipt. I paid this much for the pipe. And I'm charging you what I paid for it plus labor. But in the store, you don't know what their profit margin is, and if you knew, you probably wouldn't buy anything. Right? And as Prabhupada said, I'm not making any profit for you. They're also really aware of the flows of society. Prabhupada said they can make money when things are going up, and they can make money when things are going down. They have this kind of practical systems thinking. And the main questions they ask about their work are, is it sustainable and is it regenerative? Now, those are very important questions because, for example, when you plant seeds, you save some of the seeds from the harvest to plant next year. You never give everything away. Questions about the temperament of the field of resources. Entrepreneurship, yes. That we'll discuss in the next principles. Excellent question. How do you know between greediness and expansiveness? So then we look at the further principles of Dharma. Well, it's interesting. What about our expansive preaching mentality? All of us as devotees, we want everyone to become Krishna conscious. That's true for all of us. Like all of us are teachers of Krishna consciousness to one extent or another, but we may not have that as our profession. But when we're looking at how do I want to contribute to society, there's, preaching Krishna consciousness may not be our livelihood and how we want to contribute to society. But how do I want to generate the wealth do I want to make society prosperous? Like I would like society to be prosperous, otherwise I wouldn't be teaching this. But I don't want to personally be the one to make society prosperous. I want to personally make society wise. So people in ideas, they're asking, is my work true? Is it wise? And in artistry, they're asking, is it beautiful and is it supportive? And in resources, they're asking, am I making sustainable regenerative wealth? We had something called ISKCON 3.0 in North America, which was organized by North American leadership. And I was in one group where one of the group members said, the greatest pleasure is to give lots of donations to ISKCON, to make a lot of money and give lots of donations to the movement. And everybody should be trained to do that because there's nothing more satisfying than that. And I thought, for you, your satisfaction is in this expansive wealth. Because people in the field of resources are going to be your main givers of charity. They're the main payers of taxes. They're the main employers of society. So they're not only generating wealth for the customers, they're also generating wealth for the employees. So you might want to give everyone Krishna consciousness, but you might have no interest in giving everybody milk and corn. Do you follow what I'm saying? or copper, or whatever. That might not interest you at all. Yes? Yes, salespersons, yes. Okay, last one is field of government. Again, if you want to go more deeply, this is chapter 3 is on the nature of the fields. Chapter 4 is on the nature of the people in the fields. And then in our appendices, we have on page 499, there's exercises to better understand the fields, and in Appendix B, exercises to better understand your place in the fields. So the field of government. So as soon as human society becomes a little bit complicated, it needs to be organized in some way. Just like for the Burning Man Festival, at first they thought, well, we're just going to let anybody do whatever they want. And people got hurt. And then they realized they needed a little temporary government. They needed to have roads. They needed to have rules. They needed to enforce the rules. Now, this doesn't just apply to political governments. It also applies to organizations like NATO and Interpol and the UN. And it applies to landlords, Prabhupada says. So they're like have a little government. You know, their apartment building is like a little kingdom. And they're making sure that everybody gets water and food and parking space and that kind of thing that government does. Now, shastrically, people in this field should make their money by taxes or fines or fees or rent and not by charity. But in 2024, there are a lot of what we ironically call non-government organizations that do government-type work from charity because there's some gap in government. So there are nonprofit organizations that do things like build roads and provide for medical care and education and the kind of social services that are normally done by government. So any ideas about what careers might be in this field? Yes. Lawyers, yes. Yes. President, yes. Clerks, not usually. Those are usually artistry people assisting government. So that's an example where you're in artistry, but you're assisting government. Doctors, Okay, so doctors are generally in ideas. Now, some modern doctors act as if they're in artistry. Like you go to them, you say, this is my disease, this is the medicine I want, write me a prescription. But doctors are supposed to be educating and guiding. And they're also supposed to be straightforward. Like, you know, you have cancer, you have to lose weight, you have to stop smoking. They're going to tell you straightforward truth you don't want to hear. Now, medical technicians are in artistry. Most nurses are in artistry. We have some nurse practitioners that act as doctors. Dentists are in artistry because they're much more like, you know, plumbers. Public health people are in government. So anyone working in the public health system, as Rukmini was pointing out, they're working in health, but they're in government. Yes. Well, everybody's got to make money, but that's different than running a business with the purpose of creating wealth for society and making a profit. I mean, again, everyone has to make money. But is the goal of dentistry, the goal of dentistry is to make the world functional and beautiful. You've got artistry right there, functional and beautiful. And they're not usually educating. I mean, if they are, then that would put them in ideas. If one of their main purposes is education. Yes? Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. So a school principal, in the United Kingdom, a principal is called the head teacher. And in the United States, we often call them instructional leaders. So if the principal is really a head teacher, then they're a leader in the field of ideas. Now, if the principal is just making sure the school follows the law, then they're in government. And here in America, we have superintendents who manage a lot of schools, and they're making sure that the schools follow the right curriculum and follow the fire codes and keep attendance records and things like that. So that's in government. Hey, Rukmini, what did we decide about human resources?
It was interesting because
Were you all able to hear that? Okay, let's look at the temperament of the people. Oh, wait. A few more careers. We should get a few more careers, government. What? Police officers, yes. Yes. Any type of what? Ooh. I am so glad that I didn't move on. Any group of leader that would support a group of people to do a specific thing. That was an excellent wrong answer. And one of those wrong answers that's really a teaching moment for everyone. So thank you, and thank you again. So although government are like the leaders of society, a leader may not be in the field of government. So think of it this way. When it rains, there has to be clouds. When there's clouds, it may not be raining. Government is providing the leadership for society. However, there are leaders in all four fields. Are there business leaders? Yes, they're not. That doesn't put them in the field of government. You ask me a school principal. That's a leader in the field of ideas. Do you follow? That's a leader, but they're in the field of ideas. You could be the head of a scientific team, right? Or like, I'm the chairperson of the Shastric Advisory Council to the GBC. That's a leadership position, but it's in the field of ideas. You can be a leader in the field of artistry. I met one devotee who's a project leader where he organizes teams of plumbers, electricians, carpenters, interior designers to outfit businesses that have gotten new buildings or renovating. And he's trying to please the customer or the client. He's a leader in the field of artistry. So a lot of people think that if I'm a leader, if I have some administrative role, then I'm in the field of government. That is not correct. You can have the prosperity type of Aishvarya in any of the four fields. Yes? Leadership. Well, I thought I just did. So you could be a leader in ideas if you're a school principal or the head of a scientific team. You could be a leader in resources if you're the CEO of a business. No. Oh, okay. It would not fall under that category. Of government. Yeah, sure. Just like people running an NGO that does government type work.
Security people.
Security guards, yeah.
Private security people.
Private security people. No, definitely not. Their whole thing is protection and law and health inspectors, government, but they're working for government. She was saying who weren't working for government. Yeah, a lot of the lawyers aren't working for the government. I mean, you've got the prosecutor's office who's working for the government, and then you've got the government-provided defense attorneys, but you can hire a criminal defense attorney that's private, and you can hire a civil attorney that's private. Now, of course, all lawyers who come before a judge are considered officers of the court. However, they don't get paid by the government, and they're not literally working for the government, but they're in the field of government. You could be a private mediator that didn't work for government. Yeah. Yes? Well, we just talked about HR. Okay, so what Rukmini was saying is that technically HR should be in the field of government, but it's often actually run as if it was in resources or even artistry. Okay, the temperament of the people in the field of government. So like resources, this is an expansive field. This is not a satisfied field. I want to protect more people. I want to take care of more people. This is also not a field of honesty. This is a field of diplomacy, which Prabhupada also talks about in that same 18th chapter purport. right? One of the careers in this field is diplomat. Right? If people in the field of government are fully straightforward, they can cause a war. Right? Okay, and the main concern of this field is justice, morals, ethics, law. The main questions they have about their work are, is it just? Is it honorable? Actually, I feel the career that really epitomizes this field is the firefighter, because these people are willing to sacrifice their lives for the sake of protection of others and justice. They are literally willing to sacrifice their right arm. Any questions about the temperament of government? Yes. Well, we have two big problems in modern society. One is people are in the wrong place, which we'll get into briefly in a moment. And the other is that people are in the right place wrongly. They're in the right place, but they're not doing it dharmically. What I've talked about just now is the dharmic expertise in each field, which is the way it's described in Shastra. But there's also inclinations for a field that haven't been developed in their dharmic expertise. So you might have an inclination for artistry or an inclination for resources. Otherwise, why did Prabhupada tell us to teach Varnashram Dharma? If these four fields always exist and the temperament of the people of these four fields always exist, why should we have to teach anything? Well, one reason is that people are in the wrong place. The other reason is they're in the right place, but they don't know how to do their work dharmically. So a dictator who's abusing their position of power, either they don't belong in government at all, either they have a different temperament and they're working in the wrong field, or they're, because your dharma in your field becomes adharma in another field, or you have the temperament, but you haven't learned how to do it properly as dharma. Does that make sense? It's like I can be in your house taking your stuff. I can be stealing in your house. I'm in the wrong place. I can be in my house, but I cannot be taking care of my house. I don't fix the plumbing. I never sweep the floor. You know, I don't take care of my own place. I don't cherish my own place. Okay. Again, I teach this normally 2 hours on the nature of the fields, 2 hours on the temperament. So this was a quick run through. Now, Krishna says twice in the Bhagavad Gita, don't do someone else's work. Now, what's really interesting is he says, don't do someone else's work even if you're really good at it. And he says it 2 times. Don't go into someone else's path. Don't pretend to be something that you're not. And he uses this very interesting Sanskrit word, bhayavaha. Bhaya means fear. Avaha means a vehicle. Your work will become a vehicle of fear for you and everyone else. So how does that happen for ourselves personally? So when I'm doing my own work, I'm going to feel enlivened. I'm going to feel energized. I may even forget it's time to eat. If I'm doing someone else's work, I'm going to feel depleted. I'm going to feel frustrated. I may procrastinate a lot. If I'm doing my own work, my mind is my friend. I'm not battling with my mind. When I'm doing someone else's work, my mind is my enemy. I may be thinking, what am I doing this useless stuff for? Or why isn't someone else doing it? Or, ugh, I don't like this work. It makes me feel yucky. Or does anybody care that I'm doing this? And in some way, our mind will be opposing us. One devotee was telling me how in order to do her work, which was not in her field, she had to guilt trip herself all the time. You have to do this. It's your service. It's what you're supposed to be doing. But she was constantly battling with her mind. When we're doing our own work, we're naturally detached. Remember I said how Prabhupada said that when you desire what's natural, it's not a desire? You're naturally detached from the fruits of your work. The work itself is so satisfying. When I'm doing someone else's work, I'm not satisfied with the work itself, and therefore I get very attached to the fruits of my work. So we can see why Krishna is both saying, do your own work, make your mind your friend, be detached from the results. They all go together. Okay, still in our first area of identifying our prosperity type and career field, the next principle is to advance through life while nourishing our nature. And this is discovering what our nature is when we don't yet have the dharmic expertise. So the Shastra shows the dharmic expertise of each field. And we may look at that and say, well, I'm not like that. But what we're looking for is this, right? And even Mr. Usain Bolt, he started out like this. So what we're looking for is this initial proclivity. Now, one way we can find this is that Krishna says our nature cannot be repressed. Our nature cannot be repressed. And the empirical research is that our basic nature is evident by the time we're 13. Now, I've worked with a lot of kids, and I'd say many times it's evident before that, but definitely by 13. And ideally, our parents and our teachers notice this in us. Now, because our nature can't be repressed, it may come out in a way that's disturbing. And we give some examples of this in our book. So there was one guy in school who was always doing this. Stop that! Stop that. Go to the principal. Right? And one day when he was 10, his teacher said, stay after class. And he's like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And the teacher says, no, you're not in trouble. And what did the teacher give him? Yes, and he became a very famous drummer. So sometimes it ends up like that, right? Like some people who are leaders and protectors and who are naturally in government, right? The whole time they're growing up, they're saying, hey, that person isn't following the rules. That's not fair. Make them follow the rules. Stop that. Mind your own business. But they're not doing this and this should be. Mind your own business. Mind your own business. But what about that? And then when you put them in charge of security in the Polish festival, everybody loves them. So sometimes it happens that people's nature is coming out in a way in childhood that other people think is troublesome. Guess what I got in trouble for when I was 3? In school, in nursery school. Being a teacher, yes. And who was I trying to teach? The teachers, yes. And it's interesting, as an adult, a lot of what I've done is train teachers, right? But I grew up always being told, stop teaching, stop teaching. So in an ideal life, when we're young, our propensities are noticed and nurtured. When we're in the prime of life, we work according to our propensities. When we're in middle age, we retire and guide others. And when we're at the end of life, we have nothing to do with this, and we prepare for our final journey. Now, a lot of people are only interested in this. Well, let me just find my right place. But now we're coming to what you brought out about how do I be in my right place rightly? So that's our next 2 areas. So now we're going to finding satisfaction and purpose in our work. So here we're at principle 3, extending our prosperity to others. So Krishna says in the 18th chapter that even great souls should give in charity. We are meant to share. We're not meant to make a lot of money and live alone and spend it all on ourselves. At least we should share it with our spouse, our children, our parents, the creatures that live around the house. We're supposed to be sharing it with someone. Srila Prabhupada often says how much money we get in this life is directly related to how charitable we were in a previous life. What I find really fascinating is that there's a lot of empirical evidence that how much money we get in this life is related to how charitable we are in this life. There's something going on where Krishna really wants us to share. He doesn't like us to be selfish. But it's not just a question of sharing money. We can also share whatever kinds of prosperity we enjoy. If I'm enjoying Gyan, share Gyan. If I enjoy Aishvarya, share Aishvarya. This is the idea of volunteering. I can give my time and volunteer in a way that shares my prosperity. Now, this is a very brief list. In the book, we have much more comprehensive examples, and we give a lot of specific examples from history. By the way, we all know that it's more pleasurable to give than just to take everything for ourselves, don't we? That's the whole basis behind Christmas or Diwali. Can you imagine if the stores at Christmas said, take all the money you've saved for gift giving and spend it on what you like? Would that work? Isn't that interesting? We're all more satisfied by giving. Now, that's not enough. We could be in our right place and be charitable. We also need to do ethical and meaningful work of value. So first of all, it means that our work should be honest. We should be representing our goods or services accurately. We should be charging a fair price. We should be paying our employees a fair price and taking good care of them. But even that's not enough. Our work should be actually meeting people's needs. Our work should be providing real value. A lot of work today is simply meeting people's, what we would call artificial or manufactured needs, or doing things that are harmful. You know, if you're in the tobacco industry or the alcohol industry or pornography industry, you're actually creating harm in society. And again, a lot of the things that are being sold, a lot of the products and services that are being sold, they're all useless. So our work should be honest and of value. Yes? Excellent. Excellent, thank you. So the question was that both resources and government are fields of diplomacy. I mean, Prabhupada says very clearly in that one purport in the 18th chapter, in the field of resources, lying is compulsory, and in the field of government, diplomacy is compulsory. And yet everybody has to be honest. So we don't expect that business people are going to reveal their profit. Again, if they did, nobody would buy anything. It just wouldn't work. They're not going to be able to go through with you, well, I have to pay my employees this much, and I'm paid this much for the electricity, and that it's just not going to work. And in government, one has to be diplomatic. One isn't telling straightforward truth. But at the same time, you're not misrepresenting your goods or services. If someone in business is actually misrepresenting things, then that's cheating. If they're saying, you know, this is higher quality than it is, or this does a job that it doesn't actually do, that's cheating. Or if they're making, you know, $250 billion and their employees are making $15, that's cheating. In the field of government, you shouldn't be profiting off of government. You shouldn't be using government, which we'll get to in crossing fields. You shouldn't be using government to make a profit. It's not a business. In government, your primary thing is to serve the people and to have equal justice for everyone. You don't cheat the people. You're not taking the people's taxes to line your pockets. You're not propounding, you know, what's it called? You're not propounding human rights and social justice in the world and then doing secretive arms deals with terrorists. That would be very dishonest. But you have to use diplomacy in government. I mean, even like our you know, mayoral government, you know, governor and presidential candidates, none of them are going to get up and say, actually, I have very little power according to the American system of government, and so I'll only be able to do these few minuscule things if you elect me. So there's some degree of diplomacy. Thank you. Is that okay? Because that's an excellent question. Yes.
In the field of resources, and like let's say you have a bunch of bakeries, and you price your loaf of bread for $10. And if somebody comes and says, I only have $1, you marked it $10, and you don't give it to them, is that called being dharmic?
That's actually your dharma. because otherwise you're not going to have sustainable regenerative business. Your business is, and you're bringing out one of the problems when a person with a government mentality works in business. That's exactly what they'll do. They'll say, oh, you're poor, I'll give it to you for $1, and then the business goes bankrupt, and then it neither feeds other people nor it neither feeds the customers nor the employees. Well, but if it's a form of charity, then it's got to be done as a form of charity. In other words, the person running the business has to calculate how much money do I have to bring in to keep my business sustainable and regenerative, and then how can I separately, making sure the business is bringing in enough profit that it's sustainable and regenerative, how can I separately give charity? But that's different than a mentality of social justice, which comes in with government, or a mentality of pleasing the customer and the client that comes in with artistry. I was reading about these people who were being praised for giving poor people like deals at the cash register, but they were actually stealing from their employer. And I was thinking they're praising them, oh, I'll take this, you can have this, because they wanted to please the client, but they weren't thinking about sustainable regenerative wealth for the business. But yeah, certainly if you're running a business, you have to give in charity. I mean, everybody should give in charity. Is that clear?
So in other words, if you've allotted for a certain amount of transactions that are going to take away from your bottom line, so you've already filtered that into your profit,
Yes.
then it's okay.
Not only is it okay, but it's everyone's duty to give in charity. Everyone. Krishna says everyone, even the great souls, even the liberated, even the fully enlightened, liberated souls, everyone should give in charity. Says it purifies even the great souls. Now, there is a way to add value that's beyond ordinary karma, and we have a whole chapter on this. This is one of my most exciting parts of the book, and I only have like a minute to go through it right now, but I think this is so enlivening, because this is something that Rukmini and I call the cycle of frustration. If you just do your ordinary dharma, you get wealth, you get some pleasure, but materially that's not going to be satisfying. So you're going to go for liberation. But then again, that's not going to be satisfying, so you're going to go right back to this cycle of frustration. And the way to get beyond it is to work with love. Love for your work, for your real self, for the people or the beings that you serve, and ultimately love for Krishna. And when we do that, we can become an agent of spiritual value that goes beyond people's karma. We can actually be an agent for dynamic, ever-expanding benefit. And it's just amazing. Now, there's another way to look at ethical work of value. And again, we're going to turn to this verse that Krishna has twice in the Bhagavad Gita. And that is, don't do someone else's work. And here we're going to look at it not just how it harms ourselves, but how it harms others. Now, we have 2 chapters on this. I think it's 5 and 6. In chapters 5, we talk about this in a general way, the harm of going in the wrong field. In chapter 6, we talk about what specific harms each particular crossing does. So this is another thing that I spend a 2-hour class just on this. So I've got now about 2 or 3 minutes that I'm going to try to go through all of this. Well, we started a little late, yeah, with all of our technological stuff. So I may go a little bit. Can I go a little bit over time? Yes. Since we started late? Okay, well, let's look at crossing government and resources. These are both fields of expansion and diplomacy. Right? But one is interested in sustainable wealth, and the other is interested in justice and morals and ethics. When those with a mentality of government work in resources. Do any of you know what happened in the former Soviet Union when the government took over the farms? It was fun when I taught this to a group of Russians. They all said in one voice, "There was famine." Yeah. Yes, it also happened in China. In Russia and in China, the government took over the farms and people starved. They are starving, yes. Right. And you have this problem with, I'm going to set the prices for social justice and for fairness, and the business goes bankrupt. When people with the mentality of resources work in government, they try to profit off of government. Right? Or we have the example of private prisons in America. Do they want the prisoners to be reformed? They want repeat customers, right? Crossing government and ideas. Now, these tend to be kind of systems thinkers. But government people are looking at the systems in order to control them and make sure everybody gets what they need. People in ideas are looking at the systems to understand them and give guidance. Government is expansive. Ideas is satisfied. Government is diplomatic. Ideas is straightforward. When people with the mentality of ideas work in the field of government, they're too merciful. They're soft on crime. This is a problem we have in our ISKCON society, by the way. People don't get properly punished. Also, when people with the mentality of ideas work in the field of government, they want to research and research some more and research some more and some more and some more, and decisions that need to be made quickly for the benefit of the people wait for 20 or 30 years. People with the mentality of, these are just a few examples. In the book we have many more with historical illustrations. When people with the mentality of government work in ideas, they'll tend to politicize knowledge. Do you trust a history book written by politicians? And that damages people's faith in the field of ideas, which is very bad for society in general. Okay. Also, people with the mentality of government work in ideas. They're going to tend to impose a more hierarchical system on what needs to be a free flow of knowledge. Crossing ideas and resources. These are both what we would call unsentimental fields. But the ethics is very different, and I find this crossing perhaps the most interesting. So when ideas-minded people work in resources, they're going to feel that making money is unethical. They're going to think, I shouldn't be making a profit. It's unethical to make a profit. When people with the mentality of resources work in ideas, they're going to think it's unethical to spend human time and money on theoretical research that isn't making a profit and isn't proving to do anything practical. That they'll feel that's actually unethical. Or resources-minded people working in ideas may profitize knowledge. Think about pharmaceutical companies who do pharmaceutical research. Again, can you trust it? No. And then people no longer have faith in the field of ideas, which is damaging. It's like if you couldn't trust what your eyes saw anymore. Right? There's no guidance for society. Crossing government and artistry. Now, both of these fields serve people directly, but artistry more like an assistant. You could think more like in Dasyabhav, and government more as a parent, more like Vatsalyabhav, which is a very different kind of service. And government is expansive, artistry is satisfied, government is diplomatic, artistry is honest. When government-minded people work in artistry, their desire for justice, morals, and ethics is the most frustrated of any other field crossing for government-minded people. They'll often become vigilantes or agitators. I'm convinced that a lot of people who are screaming all over the internet, justice, morals, ethics, are government-minded people who are in the wrong field, where they don't have any way of actually working for this practically. Also, government-minded people working in artistry, they really are not into pleasing customers and clients, and they may make terrible workers. They may be insubordinate, or they may miss deadlines. Artistry-minded people working in government, they may turn the government into a bureaucracy. They're much more concrete people. Government is much more abstract. Artistry-minded people working in government are going to have a lot of difficulty working just on principles instead of on rules, or making decisions in what's called the fog of war, where you have a battle plan when you go in, but then once the battle starts, you have to change everything up. Ideas and artistry. So these are both fields of satisfaction and honesty, but very different kinds of satisfaction and honesty. When ideas-minded people work in artistry, you may have the same kind of problem that you have when government-minded people work in artistry. They may have problems pleasing a customer or client and may be insubordinate, or they may procrastinate, or they may be late. Also, when people with a mentality of ideas work in artistry, they may not be able to relate to the fact that artistry has to provide all the sensory pleasures of society. and they may dry up the field. Like I have one friend of mine who has a ideas mentality, works in artistry, and he said, why do the electricians make the wires in the boxes beautiful? No one sees it anyway. When people with an artistry mentality working in ideas, they may sensualize knowledge. They'll present a sensualized religion, sensualized science, which again damages the field of ideas. They may also think that most of the work of ideas is useless. Like, why are we doing theoretical research as far as, why are we finding out the eating habits of endangered bears in Siberia or something? You know, just like, and they may neglect a lot of the work of the field of ideas. Crossing resources and artistry. So these are both fields that deal with practical things in life. But when people with the mentality of resources work in artistry, they'll destroy the craft. Why should I sit here making pots on a potter's wheel? I could make it into a factory and make so many more pots, and so many more people would have pots, and the craft is destroyed. I saw this recently in India in one devotee's project, where instead of having, carving stone by hand, they were mixing fiberglass with concrete to make it look like carved stone. So resources-minded people working in artistry, they'll make fast foods. Instead of making entertainment that inspires and enriches people, they'll throw a bunch of sex and violence in it to make money. People with the mentality of artistry working in resources, they're not going to have the mood for sustainable regenerative wealth. Therefore, they may end up doing a lot of pollution. Or they just don't have the mood of expansion. Again, these are just a very, very few examples. All right, we're going to progress to dharmic mastery. And here we have the real key to lack of corruption here in this first one. So first, lack of corruption is being in the right field. If you're in the wrong field, even if you're a naturally honest person, you're going to cause corruption in society. Because you're going to bring your dharma to a place where your dharma becomes adharmic. But even in your right field, you have to do it rightly. And Rukmini and I call this cherishing our prosperity and field of work. Actually, our prosperity all comes from Lakshmi Devi, from Bhumi Devi, the wife of the Lord. If we don't cherish our prosperity, it's like we're cutting off the head of the goose who laid the golden egg, or cutting off the tree that's giving us fruit. So our first source of prosperity is our own body and mind. I'm sure you know people who have jobs that are damaging them physically or mentally. They're working too many hours, they never eat the right kind of food, they never get any exercise, or they're in horrible working conditions. And then we want to cherish those with whom we work. We don't want to damage them physically, and we don't want to damage them mentally and emotionally. Right? We want to actually take care of them. They're also our sources of prosperity. And then we want to take care of the natural environment. Now, whatever specific type of prosperity we're enjoying, we should be cherishing that. So again, this is just a few examples in the book. We go into much more depth. But like, let's say that I'm enjoying vairagya. So I don't want to be so detached that I don't care about anybody. I want to make sure I also sacrifice for others' well-being. If I'm enjoying Aishvarya, I want to make other people feel smart and competent. Right? Then we look at cherishing the integrity of the field. This is something Srila Prabhupada talks about a lot. Remember we talked about what each dharmically expertise person would sacrifice for? In artistry, they'll sacrifice for the quality and integrity of their craft, even if they're being pushed to make more money or to work faster. I saw a sign in a restaurant once that said, "We make our sandwiches slowly. If you want fast food, go down the street." In government, it's making sure that you keep serving people utmost, that you're not profiting off of government, that you're collecting your wealth fairly, that you have justice for everybody. In resources, particularly here, is taking care of the ecology. Now, government has to take care of the non-agricultural land and animals. But in resources, especially, taking care of the agricultural land and animals and making sure all your financial dealings are honest. In ideas, making sure truth is applied beneficially, being objective. a point Prabhupada makes a lot, is not being under other people's financial control. Not being able to be manipulated financially, which might cause you to lose your objectivity. Principle 6 is having celebrations of the sacred in our life and work. In Bhagavad Gita 3:16, Krishna says, Evam pavaditam chakram. Prabhupada talking about this says, a chakra is moving. Now, in nature, plants and animals take from nature and give back to nature. We human beings need to do it deliberately. Prabhupada would say, you have to pay your electric bill to the sun. So this means we take off time from our work and our life, at least once a week, preferably once a day. We give back to our source. We give, however one understands it. If one understands it as the great Virat Rupa of the universe, as the, Brahman effulgence, as the Father, the creator of the world, or as the delightful Krishna. And whether one does that through karma yoga, gyan yoga, dhyan yoga, or bhakti yoga. Obviously, Rukmini and I favor serving the Supreme Being through bhakti. But in some way or another, everyone should give back to this divine, give back to their source. Now, if one does this, eventually it's not just a certain time of day or a certain time of week, but every moment becomes, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 4:24. We have a wonderful guest essay called Every Act a Ceremony. All right, our final personal principle is to work above the shades of ego. So Rukmini and I call these shades because tamas is like a dark curtain over the window. Rajas is like a sheer curtain. Sattva is just like a window. And being above the shades is like being outside. So I'd like to introduce you to these guys. So first we're going to meet Thomas. Hey, I'm Thomas. I'll do the right thing if it's easy, like I'll get a plant-based burger if they sell it at McDonald's for the same price. Don't expect me to go to another restaurant and pay more money. Like, I'm the kind of guy, whatever's on the television, if the remote's over there, I'm just going to watch whatever's next, Like, I am not ambitious, and I'm not some woo spiritual person, And I take care of my family and my friends, right? Don't you hurt them. I get insulted easily, and I'll insult you back. I am Rajas. I am hardworking. I am responsible. I have built society. I've built the museums and the hospitals and everything in society. I'm not lazy and not some woo person, although I go to church every Sunday. And I've worked hard for you. See all these things I've earned? I worked hard for them, and I will tell you all the hours I sacrificed, all the time I spent, all the money I spent, all my hardships to have all of these things. And someday, my name will be in the history book, and my statue will be in the park. I am sattva. I am very equipoised. I'm very balanced. I'm in harmony. I'm very forgiving because it makes me feel so good inside. I'm not ambitious and I'm not lazy. I have a shelf full of crystals and angels. I see everyone equally except for those materialistic people. What we want to do is be above the shades. Above the shades, we're understanding I'm a soul. My life is an adventure. I don't know how the adventure is going to turn out. And everything is full of play. I constantly feel like I'm playing and frolicking on a great adventure where I am a co-creator, where I am dancing with my source. I'm dancing with the Lord. The shades are like the dark side of our work. Many people think in order to do well in their work and be energized, they have to pull from these shades, but that contaminates them. Let's look at charity in the shades. So charity in tamas, I give the wrong thing to the wrong person. I give alcohol to an alcoholic. Or I give the right thing to the right person, but without respect. Here, Maharaj, take your charity. Or at the wrong place. I give someone charity when they're on the toilet or when they're sleeping. And in Rajas, I give the right thing to the right person at the right place with respect, but I'm calculating. All right, well, my boss told me to do this, and my guru told me to do this, and so if I do it, they'll be happy with me, and they'll give me this, and I'll get, or with regret, why did I give that? I shouldn't have done that. Sattva, I give the right thing to the right person at the right time, at the right place with respect, because it makes me feel so good inside. Above the shades, I give the right thing to the right person at the right time with respect, because it makes Krishna happy. The shades at work. Tamas, disengaged, deceitful, insulting, lazy, procrastinating. Rajas, attached, greedy, envious, aggressive. Things go well, yay! Things go poorly, whoa. In Sattva, equipoised, always determined, always enthusiastic. And above the shades, this is from Bhagavad Gita 3:30. 3 things to do, 3 things not to do. Not to do. Don't exploit my sources of prosperity. Don't think I'm the owner. I'm not the owner of this body, this mind, this work, this prosperity. Not to be lazy. What to do? Dedicate every moment to my ultimate source, every moment to Krishna. Always be aware, I'm not this body, I'm not this mind, I'm not this work, I'm not this field. I am a spiritual being, and do the work that's according to my nature. So now we're looking at the 2 principles for the whole society, and all of part 3 in our book is about this. So principle 8 is maintaining societal balance, cooperation between the fields, and competition within the fields. So the fields should not compete with each other. They should cooperate with each other. Ideas, trains, and guides. Government approves licensing and accreditation. It may provide venues and facilitators to help launch, repair, or maintain cooperative endeavors. Resources organizes, directs, and distributes the flow of money and materials and energy. And artistry has joint assistant endeavors. Now, it would be great if everybody was in the right field and everybody cherished their field. But because that doesn't happen, absolutely, the fields have to act as checks and balances. So ideas holds government to the rule of law. That's the role of a free press. Government regulates through law. Resources by how they spend their money. Artistry by voting with their feet because they're the biggest in number. But also artistry can regulate. We had some important court cases about that here in this country within the last couple years. By what they choose to translate into art and music and theater and so forth. Now, within the fields, there should be competition. Prabhupada says competition brings life. Right? We might want to say, I'm going to do my best for its own sake, but in practice, when we have a competitor, right, it focuses our mind, it invigorates our effort, it has us explore the edges of our potential. And there should be friendly competition, like a jewelry district or a fashion district that benefits the businesses and the customers. It shouldn't be trying to erase somebody or being predatory. Competition in artistry brings us inventions and masterpieces. In resources, brings us better quality of resources and better quality of distribution. In government, think of the benefit of having more than one political party, or being able, like we have somewhat different systems of government in each state. Competition in ideas keeps responsiveness to time, place, and circumstance, and keeps the purity in religion, medicine, and philosophy. Our last principle is all-inclusive sustainable prosperity. Modern economists made a deliberate decision to separate economic theory from natural resources. And they started propounding that economic prosperity is equal to economic growth. What is intrinsically wrong with that? To say economic prosperity equals economic growth. What is wrong with that? Yeah? Yes, and what would make it stop or slow down? But what's the basic inherent problem with economic prosperity means economic growth? You're very close. Why isn't it sustainable or regenerative? Balance economics, yes. But what's the basic problem? It promotes greed, but the basic problem. Excellent. Limited resources. You cannot have a philosophy of unlimited growth on a planet of limited resources. And when you have this philosophy, you're going to go to forcing. You're going to try to force the land to overproduce with artificial pesticides and fertilizers. You're going to try to force distribution so we can have strawberries all year. You're going to try to, by the way, Hiranyakashipu did that. You're going to try to force animals with hormones and antibiotics. You're going to be forcing people to work beyond their capacity. You're going to end up with a wealth disparity, where some people have $250 billion and someone else only has one pair of shoes. So the actual economic system is all-inclusive sustainable prosperity, where all the people on earth can have their natural career field and prosperity types. So we identified our ideal career field and prosperity types. We learned the secrets of making our work deeply meaningful. We went to progress toward Dharmic mastery and the whole system for peace and prosperity according to these 9 principles. So I wanted to thank you very much. Sorry we ended up with a little late start, and so we went a little overtime. We could take maybe just 2 or 3 questions. If anyone has any final questions. Yes.
Thank you, Mataji. This was really a great lecture and brought me a clarity of the topic, like which I have been thinking a lot recently. So one question about, like, as you are suggesting that everybody is unique with these qualities and they should follow one of those 4 paths.
Yes.
What about, like, all the generic advice you like see everywhere? All the generic advice, like people like write a lot of books. All these books are targeted to all the audience, right? So how do you like make sure that you are getting, or like how do you see those resources? Like,
Okay, so Rukmini and I talked somewhat about other career guidance. There are certainly some things generic, like everyone should give in charity, for example. Everyone should do work that's honest and of value. And that's useful for anybody. But we haven't found anyone else who's teaching that there's different systems of Dharma for different fields and how to determine that. As far as we know, it's only coming from the Vedic literature. So what they're giving is valuable, but if that's all you've got, it's not going to be enough to solve the basic problems of the world. Therefore, it's a task that Srila Prabhupada put on us to do.
thank you.
We did say one theorist who found 2 fields.
Okay, so Rukmini says we found a theorist who found 2 of the fields. I mean, I've seen some who tried to do this, but sometimes it's their imagination comes into it, yeah? I don't want to name specific names. I think we had, Nitya, do you have a question?
I was just wondering if there's any connection between the different types of prosperity and the 4.
Excellent. So each of the 4 fields does tend to generate certain types of prosperity for society. Like the field of artistry tends to generate Shri. However, as an individual, we can be having a career that gives us any of these combinations of prosperity types in any of the 4 fields. So what I see is for the individual, knowing your prosperity types gives you some specificity of knowing your career within a field. Just like hopefully now Vrinda and Shrita know what field they're in, and hopefully they know their prosperity types. So they could put that together and they could say, okay, we're in this field, and within this field, these are the prosperity types that we would want to enjoy. but the fields do tend to generate certain prosperity types for society. So it might be simpler to get that prosperity type in that corresponding field, but by no means is there an absolute of that at all. Okay, well, thank you very, very much. We do have the book here. It's lower price than you can buy on Amazon, and I will sign it for you. It was a bestseller. How long was it a bestseller, Rukmini? About a month?
It was on and off actually for a couple months.
Couple months. So about 2 months, it was continually, not continuously, but continually an Amazon bestseller. And Krishna Meditations was a bestseller just for a couple days in the meditation and Eastern philosophy categories. So again, thank you very much. Anything good in this presentation? Hare Krishna. Anything good in this presentation is from Srila Prabhupada, our acharyas in the Shastra. Anything bad in this presentation is from me. Don't even blame my co-author. So again, thank you. Hare Krishna.